now. Dr. Kofi Echampo joins us on the phone lines for a very quick conversation. Doc, thank you for joining us. I see that you've co-authored a book, Disaster Forensics, Unraveling the Impact, Rebuilding the Future, with some other African experts in this area. First of all, help us understand the concept of disaster forensics and how important it becomes in situations like this.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, Doc, I can hear you. There's a bit of feedback in your background, so please put off your radio and let's engage.
Okay, thank you very much, Caleb, and I would like to say a very good morning to your cherished listeners. And I would like to stand on behalf of the Global Chair of the IDEF UK, that's the International Academy for Certified Disaster and Emergency Management and Forensic Criminology Professionals. Caleb, I think I would like to say that we kindly express our sincere condolences to the President of the Republic of Ghana for this tragedy. We acknowledge the assignment that the gallant officials were embarking on. And I think it is something that we need to acknowledge and also make sure that as this disaster has occurred, we put all hands on deck and all knowledge on board to make sure that we unravel the impact and rebuild the future. Normally in disasters, it can actually be either man-made or it can be natural. And it can also happen in a localized setting, but depending on the impact and the severity of property infrastructure and things that are associated with it, it can be classified as actually a mass disaster or a localized or a simple one. And as you rightly said, there is a book on disaster forensics, and it is a very unique book because if you scan through Africa, sub-region, and even across the globe, you can see that people talk about disaster, but the combination of disaster and forensics is a very unique area. And that is why these three gallant African leaders, experts in forensics, acknowledged as Dr. Stacy from Nigeria, Dr. Makube from Cameroon, and myself from Ghana, came together to look at these perspectives because we do understand disaster as everybody understands. However, when it comes to the forensic aspect, that is the investigative tool to make sure that we actually rectify and be sure that it's not just a disaster, but we actually make sure if there is justice that has to be served.
Right. So let's take it a step at a time. So in such a situation, if I come to you as a disaster forensics expert, looking at all that we know from the crash and the recovery of the bodies to the transportation of same for identification and other purposes, how does the disaster forensics come into play? Okay.
Thank you very much, Caleb. As you rightly said, I'm sure we all acknowledge that what has happened is a disaster. And in fact, looking at the severity, the people involved, the aircraft, and even looking at even the resources that has to be used to make sure that some of even the bodies were recovered from the site, looking at the flight itself, you can see that it is something that can be quantified, and it's something that can be considered as something that is tragic and is on the heart of all Ghanaians. In fact, those who are even closer to the victims or not, it's something that has hit all of us. And if you look at this bit, that is why we have to come in with the forensic aspect of the disaster. And this actually involves the interplay of what we call forensic disaster victim identification. And you can see that yesterday, all the bodies were shipped to South Africa for proper identification. When we talk about forensics, we do not talk about only one person. We don't talk about only DNA. No, we need to go beyond that. We need, because this happened, there were fire. In fire, we need fire forensic experts aspects to come on board. When we want to identify, we need forensic pathologists, we need forensic chemical pathologists, we need forensic toxicologists, we need all manner of forensic aspects on board, even aspects of forensic engineering in terms of the architecture of the flight. What went wrong with the flight before this tragic event happened? So forensics is not just one person talking about just identification. So forensics actually comes to play to help us to unravel what a layman perspective will see it as just a disaster. But we go beneath that and make sure we use accurate scientific and dignified identification of the victim. And this can go through the DNA, the dental examination, medical records, and also even extend to other aspects of forensics to determine and bring transparency in any investigation.
Very well. So, in this respect, we are seeing that we're going beyond just DNA. We're looking at pathologists, toxicologists, and we need to get forensic engineers to get into this. When you look at the time lapse of this tragedy up to now, concerns that have come up really for a lot of people is how the recovered remains were carried from uphill down and eventually transported to Accra. Is there,
yes,
when you look at that, is there anything that can be lost in that process in terms of identification, in terms of retrieving vital information that could help us unravel truth?
Thank you very much, Caleb. In fact, when we have to look at this disaster, we normally look at this as a crime scene, okay? And when crimes do occur, we need to follow what we call crime scene methodology to make sure that we look at evidence. And I must say that when we talk about forensics, the most important thing in any forensic investigation is the crime scene, okay? And the most important thing in that crime scene is the evidence. So in this respect, normally we do not want people who do not have the requisite knowledge to actually get into crime scenes because they mess up the most vital element of the crime scene, which is the evidence. And the evidence needs to be pursued or need to be searched in the crime scene by an expert.
Doc, would you rather prefer to say an accident scene instead of a crime scene, since we've not yet established culpability or any such?
Sure. It is holistically considered as a scene of disaster. So we can use the word scene of disaster. And it could be a crime scene or it could be a scene where a disaster has occurred. So a disaster scene, I think that is the most appropriate one. So in that context, looking at the disaster scene, the element of evidence is so important. And the element of the evidence is what will give us the substantial aspect of it. Because there are two major forms of evidence in any disaster scene or a scene of crime. And we have the direct and the circumstantial evidence. The direct are the eyewitness, what the farmers were saying, and everybody who looked at it, if it was captured on phone, etc. However, the circumstantial, which deals with the scientific, both physical and biological evidences, are so important. And that is what forensics comes in a disaster scene to make sure that it is upheld. Looking at how the thing happened, you can see that most people went in it. People are taking parts of the aircraft and showing it off here and there. That is a breach of the disaster scene methodology, which needs to be put together very well. So as you rightly said, fine, when we are looking at both the physical and the biological evidence, definitely it might be trampled upon. But we expect that specialists or experts who get to the crime scene will make sure that this methodology is upheld. Because at the end of the day, anything that we come up with, if the evidence doesn't go through what we call the chain of custody to preserve the integrity, it can never be admissible. It can never be taken as something that we can put our trust in it. So I agree with you that the way it was handled, we need to actually look at it. And all these is a matter of bringing experts together. So, Caleb, we have been advocating that we need a forensic commission. We need a forensic authority which will bring all these classes of experts together. So in situations of national disasters like this, you have a team on standby that will move to the site and make sure that due diligence are done.
My final question was going to be whether we have local capacity, but you've spoken to the need for a forensic authority to handle some of these disasters as and when we experience them. But so I would still ask you whether we have local capacity to handle some of these situations.
Yeah, Caleb, I think when we talk about local capacity, I would say that it is scattered. We have so many professionals in our universities that can do a lot of DNA. We have so many medical experts that can do aspects of examination on dead bodies, whether charred, whether any form of disasters. However, we fail to recognize that forensic is a team and there has to be cohesion. There has to be play of labor and skill. So it is very important for us to bring all these things together. I will not be surprised that in South Africa, it is going to a university, which is having a forensic medical unit, because most of the South African universities are having a lot of forensic faculty, and it is really constructed very well. And I can tell you, in Ghana, there is no single university with a forensic medicine faculty. Forensic is treated mostly when it comes to the specialties, either in pathology, some aspect of psychiatry, some aspect of chemistry. But as to bring it together to make it a robust system to handle some of these national disasters is actually a problem. And I will say that if we want to handle such cases well, Ghana capacity cannot stand the test of time. How is it regulated? Is it certified by the international body in terms of regulation of forensics? So if we say capacity, we have to look at standards. Which standards are we going to use to make sure that we can say we have done due diligence to this? So I think we have to look at it very well.
Right. Thank you. But Doc, just by way of information, we do know there's the Ghana Academy of Forensic Sciences, by the way.
Yes, I know Ghana Academy of Forensic Sciences. I have had interactions with a couple of the members and some executives of Ghana Academy of Forensic Sciences. And I think there is a conference that is even coming up, and it's likely I'll be there myself as well.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Kofi Achampo. He's a forensic disaster expert. He shared his thoughts with us.